All righty, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Very excited. Last call to make sure your Zoom app is up to date. But we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna ask our first speaker of the night, Andrea Hart, somebody who many of you know well, to come up to center stage and ask DJ Kim Bellware to fade us out here and stop the screen share.
Thank you. Shout out to Kim for those sweet, sweet tunes. Welcome, everyone. It feels like a huge honor to get to do this. As you know, I'm one of the 4 City Bureau co-founders, and I'm just excited to be here and see that the number keep going up on the participants and hearing everybody in the chat. Hi, dogs. And so, as all of you know, I departed from my role as Director of Community Engagement in the summer to pursue a divinity degree at Vanderbilt. Happy to share many insights on Divinity School and also on Nashville. So I'm actually calling in from Nashville, where it is 70 degrees, although I know it's warm in Chicago as it is. I keep the weather for Chicago on my phone. So Harry reached out to me to do the intro and wanted to do kind of a blessing, so to speak. I've been thinking about, in DIB school, we do some centering moments at the start of class. And so I pieced through some things that I picked something that I think will, when thinking about everything that has happened over the last 5 years and the momentum of what is to come and sort of why City Bureau is so important and has been so important. So I picked a little passage that I think encapsulates that. It's for those of you who don't know, Miles Horton was some folks consider him to be sort of the father of organizing, not in a Saul Alinsky personality way, but legit organizing. And I actually don't live too far from the Highlander Center that he founded. And so I was piecing through his autobiography when thinking about what is a statement I could kind of share as a centering moment, thinking about where we've been for 5 years and where we might be going for 5 years. So I picked a passage from his autobiography, The Long Haul. So I'm going to do that as sort of a centering moment and then hand it back off to really kick you all off into the glorious Zoom party that is about to happen. So here we go. It's only in a movement that an idea is often made simple enough and direct enough that it can spread rapidly. Then your leadership multiplies really rapidly because there's something explosive going on. People see that other people not so different from themselves do things that they thought could never be done. They're emboldened and challenged by that to step into the water. And once they get in that water, it's as if they've never not been there. And so I wanted to share that because I think, it started as 4 leaders, and I see, on this call alone, 100 leaders and across the Midwest. And so it's been really beautiful to get to witness that and to still stay involved even in a different capacity. So thank you all for coming out tonight, making tonight and everything that City Bureau has done possible for the last 5 years. And I'm going to pass it back over to one of the newest City Bureau team members, to Andrew Herrera. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Andrea. That was really great reading. It was actually the first time I'd read it when you shared it, and I'm so glad you did. I wanted to kick tonight off with a thank you. A thank you to everyone who's made it out here tonight. It's really amazing to still see this number keep ticking up. We're at 118 and 119 now, keep ticking up. But also more broadly to everyone who's made this work possible over the past 5 years. Because without all of you who have read our stories, engaged with our stories, participated in our programs, donated, come to our events, without all of you contributing in ways big and small, we wouldn't be where we are today, and City Bureau wouldn't be what it is today. So this whole event, this 5th anniversary celebration, the Soapbox 2020, is a thank you to you. And I also wanted to announce that this year we set our most ambitious fundraising target yet. And with the support of everyone here, and with nearly a month to go in 2020, we already reached that goal and raised $46,700 between individual contributions and matching funds. So what does that mean? That means $46,700 in the pockets of Chicagoans who make our programs work. That's that's the equivalent of 12 fellowship reporters or 834 documenters assignments or 117 public newsrooms. So of course, it's going to be a bit of a mix and match of all of these things. But what's clear is that this kind of support, without this kind of support, stories would go untold, meetings would go uncovered, and community conversations would go unhad. So again, we want to say thank you with a small token of our appreciation. We put this together, the City Bureau Holiday Cookbook. It's a little digital cookbook with holiday favorites from our family to yours, illustrated by some of the same artists who bring our work to life throughout the year. And as a personal side note, this has actually been some of the most fun that we've had pulling this whole event together. And so we really hope that you all love it as much as we do. And just keep an eye on your inboxes tomorrow for this special treat. And tonight, we're going to try something a little bit different. You know, obviously, this is a fundraiser. And again, we're very grateful to everyone who's donated so significantly already. And instead of focusing on a dollar amount, we're gonna try to do something a little bit different tonight. And instead of focusing on a dollar amount, we're asking you to join us tonight as a sustaining monthly donor, to stick with us for the long haul and help us build the future of journalism. Or if you're an existing donor, to increase your donation by a few dollars a month. As we go through the night, if you feel excited by the work or hopeful for what we might accomplish together, I hope you'll decide to join us as a monthly donor. My own goal, or my hope here, is that we can sign up 35 people in the next hour as monthly donors. So let's see what we can do. The average monthly donation we receive is just $17, and it makes a world of difference. So whether you can give $50 or $5, the message you send will be the same, that this is the kind of work you want to support and you want to support over time. And that these programs are a product of our community coming together in solidarity to build something new and better that we can all benefit from. We'll be dropping a donation link in the chat if we haven't already. So please take a second and become a monthly donor if you haven't already. Lastly, I wanted to shout out Samantha Callender, the documenter who's live tweeting tonight's event. We'd love it if you could join her by amplifying what you hear tonight on your social channels with hashtag Soapbox 2020. And with that, I want to introduce the City Bureau leadership team, Daryl, Bettina, and Harry, the rest of the City Bureau founders who will be sharing the City Bureau story tonight.
Hello, everyone. So wonderful to see everyone here. For folks who don't know me, I'm Daryl Holliday. I am a City Bureau co-founder and our executive news up director. If this is your first time meeting us in this amazing community of folks, City Bureau is a nonprofit civic journalism lab that brings people together in a collaborative spirit to produce media that is equitable, impactful, and responsive to the public. In other words, we're making news together right now. So a quick overview of the evening. We're all going to give you a behind the scenes look at City Bureau the last 5 years. We'll bring on some of the colleagues and collaborators locally, nationally, and globally, who we've learned so much from and who are now taking parts of our model in new directions. Then we'll give you all time to meet each other. And then there'll be an optional hang after with some music. All right, so you can see it here. It's 2015. Imagine it's 2015. I had just left my job at DNA Info and had begun working at the Invisible Institute covering police misconduct. Andrea is a media-based organizer working with teens at Real Shy Youth and Young Chicago Authors. Bettina is an editor at DNA Info, working nights and weekends on the breaking news desk. Harry is a publisher at the Southside Weekly, delivering papers and selling ads. All right, so we were all having conversations in bars about objectivity and information access and talking about changing narratives over dinners together. But it was while working at the Invisible Institute that our work came into focus for the first time. And that was when a video of a Southside teen's murder by a Chicago police officer was released in late 2015. It catalyzed a month-long protest movement that led to second-degree murder conviction for that officer, the ouster of the police chief, the ouster of a county prosecutor, and a federal investigation. So we know now that that Southside teen was LaQuan McDonald. As journalists, we also knew that coverage of this watershed moment would be fraught with all the same issues that frustrated us throughout our entire careers. And we knew that the conversations we were having weren't happening in a vacuum. The four of us co-founded City Bureau together, but so many people contributed to the formation of this organization. So we put out a call. For anyone who was interested, we met in a shared office. We sent FOIA requests. We acknowledged our own lived experiences with surveillance and police. And we talked about ways that we could cover this moment more holistically. So from there, we spent weeks training and working side by side with emerging reporters, some of which are here right now, youth media makers, some of which are also here, and they produced and edited on-the-street interviews to accompany the first report from City Bureau's first fellowship team. Our process was scrappy and DIY. It was very scrappy. It was very DIY. And it led to a national story that previewed the model that we would spend the next 5 years developing. The first story to realize the potential of this new model was published on The Guardian on December 2nd, 2015, a little more than 5 years ago today. And the co-mentorship between our reporters and the youth media makers had resulted in complementary work. The youth reporters made the video in this piece that accompanied our reporting, and everyone got a byline. So as we crafted a program model and explored police accountability through our reporting, we also looked at journalism itself and saw complex problems that needed complex solutions. So we had questions. How do you build a newsroom that looks like Chicago? How can we tap into the energy of Chicagoans who are ready to make better local media? And what happens when we open our space and our work to as many people as possible? So now Bettina will tell you more about how we developed our civic reporting programs, Documenters Network, and the Public Newsroom, and how all three of those programs work together every day to address these questions.
All right, thanks so much, Daryl. I'm just so overwhelmed by everybody posting in the chat right now. It's amazing. Thank you everyone for coming. And for those of you who don't know me, I look forward to meeting you one day, I hope. I am another City Bureau co-founder and the executive editorial director. So where do I start talking about these three amazing programs? I'm definitely not gonna lie here. City Bureau didn't emerge fully formed 5 years ago with some sort of big, beautiful solution. Instead, we started with a really simple question, the one that Daryl just mentioned, which is, how do you build a newsroom that looks like Chicago? So we had developed this 10-week training program where folks can learn about reporting, writing, and community engagement. But looking at the reason that we had started City Bureau, that wasn't enough. We wanted to recruit a diverse group. And that means especially Black and Latinx reporters and other people who are missing from traditional newsrooms, whose voices are missing from local media. So we created a hiring system that prioritized local connections as much as journalism experience. And we recruited people from outside the typical college programs. And we built relationships with community groups by inviting folks into our work through youth mentorship and live events. And so the fellowship became a place where you could really show up as your full self, and we could work together to make local media that you could be proud of and believe in. Now, it shouldn't have been a unique experience, but for a lot of us, it was. So some of you might remember our very first event, Reporting in the Open. It was held at the Experimental Station. It was a pretty low-key night, but it was definitely brimming with potential and lots of ideas that were submitted by people who just wanted their local media to be better. So I know a lot of people earlier lifted their thumbs when Daryl asked how many of you have been around for 5 years. So if you were at one of those first events at the Experimental Station, drop a memory in the chat. Tell us what you remember. Why did you come out even before City Bureau was a thing that people had heard of? What were your first impressions of us? I'm almost afraid to ask that question, but if you remember that first night 5 years ago or one of those other events. You're right, Elliot was there working for Illinois Humanities. It was great you were a facilitator, Elliot. Thanks for coming tonight. From the beginning to today, huh? There are a lot of people back there. Oh, that's where we made connections. I feel like that's a beautiful part about our events is that you get to connect with people who you might not otherwise have met. All right. So interesting side note, after our first series of events, there was a story published in the Chicago Reader about us with the headline, "Today's Young Journalists Committed to Muckraking and Not Afraid to Starve." Well, luckily no one had to starve, but it has been a process to get to where we are today. So fast forward 5 years, now we have trained 111 people through our civic reporting programs. And that's not including our dozens of youth mentees from 4 different programs across the city. Our mentees have become fellows, our fellows have become team leaders or staff members, and some have gone on to work full-time at major media outlets or even started their own. We've produced some really exciting work, all while sticking to those original principles that people who are most directly impacted by a story should have a say in telling it. A great example from this year, a lot of you might have seen, was when we published an investigation into the terrible racist home lending practices of major banks in Chicago in partnership with WBEZ. The story idea came to us from Andrew Fan, who was actually working at a bank on the South Side when he joined one of our first fellowship cohorts back in 2016. He came back to us last year to lead a team of fellows, and that included Aaron Allen, whose family was one of the first few Black families to buy a house on his block in Galwood. And that collaborative reporting process is just so key to our model. But one thing we quickly realized about the program was we were training these fellows for what we thought would be the future of journalism, but it was a future that hadn't come yet. And so to help to make it come about, we needed to do something else. On the reporter side, we saw so much interest in people joining the program that we needed to create another stepping stone into journalism for people who were brand new to it. And then on the publishing side, we wanted to make the civic process more transparent so people can learn about how change gets made at the local level outside of the news cycle. And so that's what brought us to Documenters. Our first Documenters project ever was with Smart Chicago. We were annotating the Police Accountability Task Force report. That's a mouthful. That came out in 2016. So it was over 90 pages long. It was really dense. It needed a lot of unpacking, which we were able to do through Documenters with the power of crowdsourcing and rap genius. This project showed us the beauty of collective action. We brought together an intergenerational, interdisciplinary group, not just journalists, but also educators, grandparents, activists, all working towards a common goal. And we realized there was a huge untapped interest of people who want to demystify the way city works. And so we asked, how can we tap into this energy of Chicagoans who are ready to make better local media? Now, because of the Documenters Network, anyone in Chicago can sign up for a free training and get paid to show up and take notes at local government meetings. It creates new paid opportunities to be part of our work, and it creates a new public record, which is available for anyone to see and use. Together, it's a creative approach to rebuilding those bridges between people and the civic process. And it's popular. So far, 910 people have come out to our Documenters trainings. And I know there's Documenters in the house right now. So if you've been to a Documenters training or event, drop a memory in the chat. Tell us what you learned about, why did you come? Maybe if you met a friend there. We know you're out there and we know you love Documenters. All right. Okay, so from at the beginning of 2019, we were able to launch Documenters.org, a platform that gives people easy access to information about every local government meeting for the first time ever. So not only is a brand new level of transparency in the city to expose the corruption of the city, as Corley says in the chat, it is also a way for us to be able to assign more people to assignments to go to these local government meetings. And in the last year alone, City Bureau Documenters have covered over 600 meetings that might have otherwise gone totally unnoted. So now, in addition to Chicago, we are supporting programs run by local partners in Detroit, Cleveland, and as far as Fresno, California. So Documenters allowed us to bring even more people into the work. But the more we saw people's excitement to get involved, the more we realized we needed to create even more entry points for people who aren't media producers to join us. And we needed to create a space to consistently bring people together in conversations, to have a literal open door policy. So in the summer of 2016, we asked ourselves, what happens when we open our space and our work to as many people as possible? That's when we launched our Public Newsroom, our workshop series where we could welcome folks into our space and discuss, debate, and deconstruct the pressing issues of the day. Of course, at the time, it was a bit of a tough proposition because we didn't even have our own office. So instead, let's give a big hand to Build Coffee, the amazing cafe and our former next door neighbor. They actually have hosted, Ellie looked it up the other day, more than 80 public newsrooms, including our very first one, which that's just wild to look at that number. So under the guidance of our co-founder, Andrea, and her principles of community engagement, we created this newsroom and we resisted the idea that it needed to be driven by journalists. Instead, we made space for communities to have conversations about the local media we need. One person who came to the Public Newsroom said, I think very aptly, it's a space where the power is in the hands of the question asker. Most importantly, conversations in that space transformed us too. They shape the way that we do our work. We invite hosts who bring their personal experience and identities to the table while talking about local issues and possible solutions. And we make sure everyone walks away with new knowledge, new skills, and new relationships. This year, we've been meeting virtually every month, a new format with new ways to connect. This might look familiar to some of you. But if you've been to a Public Newsroom before, whether it was at Build in person or virtually this year, share a memory with us in the chat. Do you remember what the topic was? Who was the host? Who you came with? What you ate? Because that's also a very important part of those memories too. All right. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing all those memories, folks. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Harry. He's going to talk about how the programs tie together.
Thanks, Bettina. Man, it's so beautiful seeing these Public Newsroom memories. So hi, everyone. If we haven't met, I'm Harry. I'm City Bureau's Executive Director of Operations. And like truly, it's so exciting to see everyone together on this call. This chat is amazing. Just like the love, not even for City Bureau, but just like within City Bureau that's happening here is so cool. It kind of does feel like Soapbox with all the conversation going on. So when we step back and look at the past 5 years, we've landed on these 3 words that summarize what we feel like this work is really about. And it's inform, engage, equip. For us, that means you get the people the information they need, you build a network that taps into the community building already happening all the time, all over Chicago, including in this chat right now. And you spread the skills and tools people need to impact their communities. And over the past 5 years, like hands down, the thing that we are most proud of is the community that's grown around this work. There have been some amazing, amazing stories and some hard-hitting journalism published from the fellowship. And documenters have covered more than 1,000 public meetings and changed how local government happens in Chicago. But at the end of the day, for us, it's not actually about the coverage. It's really about the people who show up, who make those things happen, the relationships that we're building and the lessons that we're learning together. That is the real impact. It's also what makes this approach to the work so unique. City Bureau is not motivated by the idea of a heroic journalist who's coming in to break a big story and get a politician in trouble. We're really motivated by people coming together to break bad systems and build better ones. And all the lessons that we've learned from our programs about how to do that, how to do journalism differently, how to do it together, they also apply to how we fundraise. And I have one quick example for this. So the first time we did a fundraiser, it was the fall of 2016, and it was for the Public Newsroom. We realized when we were planning for this that how we raised the money was just as important as how much money we raised. Because for the Public Newsroom, what we needed, even more than money, was people who were invested in the idea and who would show up to help us build the space. So instead of asking for big donations, we asked people to give $10 and then to tell their friends. It was unorthodox to ask for just $10. And I vividly remember the conversations that the 4 of us had about whether it was just foolish. But it worked. More than 600 people threw in for that campaign. And 4 years later, 135 public newsrooms later, we really learned that like when you build something together, it can be much, much bigger than the sum of its parts. We would not have had such a successful start to the Public Newsroom if we'd gotten a big donation from one person. It would not have grown into what it is today. So that was the powerful lesson that we learned. Grassroots fundraising isn't just about the dollar amount you raise, it's also about community. Fundraising together is how we organize to build the future of journalism. City Bureau has grown a lot since that first fundraiser. We've gotten significant grants from local and national foundations. Our team has grown from just the 4 of us working as volunteers to 13 of us on as full-time staff. And since our founding, we've paid more than 500 people to produce local media for their communities. There's a lot that changes with growth, right? But the way that we think about fundraising is the same. And the lesson that we learned in that first Kickstarter, that fundraising is this powerful way for us to build things together. That's also why we're all here tonight. So as Andrew mentioned at the top of the evening, for the rest of this year, we're going to put every dollar that we raise from donations directly to pay people in our programs who are making local media stronger every day. Paying people to do that work is far from the only cost that we have to run City Bureau's programs. We pay salaries, we pay rent, we pay for this Zoom subscription, but it is the most important piece, and paying people really is the piece that should be paid for collectively. So this fundraising commitment, it means that the dollars that you gave to be here tonight and any other dollars that you give going forward are the same dollars that pay your neighbors to be fellows, to document meetings, to host public newsrooms. It means that the money we raise together will go to create paid opportunities for people, including a lot of us on this call, to be part of the journalistic process and make media that works for everybody. I just want to say too, like this commitment matters to us personally. To me, it's partly personal because I work on City Bureau's budget every year. So I see the impact there. But I'm also a donor to City Bureau. I'm a co-founder and I work here, but I also contribute every month because I believe in the work, and all 3 of us contribute every month. And I'll just say personally that contributing is a reminder that you've made this decision to put your own resources behind something, and that changes your relationship to it. And when enough people make that commitment, it strengthens this work in a deeper and different way. So in the same way that those early public newsrooms, they could only become what they are today because hundreds of people made the commitment to bring it to life. City Bureau in the next 5 years, to become what we need it to be, it has to be shaped by your support. And that's also why it means so much to the 3 of us and to the whole City Bureau team that you came out tonight. So thank you again for being here, for joining us and letting us tell this story of how City Bureau came together. And thank you for being a part of that story also by contributing. And with that, I want to hand it back to Andrew for an update and I think also some tunes.
Almost on the tunes.
All right.
Yeah, thanks guys for all of that. You know, it's a story that I love to hear, and actually maybe the first time I've heard it start to finish that way. And I am super excited to say we've got 5 new recurring donors. So shout out to Matt, Eric, Manny, Alma, and Emily. So that leaves us just 30 away from our goal, which just seems really reachable. We've got some really exciting speakers coming up, and we're gonna go to a little musical interlude while we get set up for that. But if you're as excited as I am about the stuff that you just heard, or just save some space for yourself to get pretty excited about what you're about to hear from the guest speakers that we have coming on, feel free to hit that donate button at any time and become a part of the next chapter of City Bureau's story. So thanks again, and if we can play that little music break, we'll be back in 3 minutes.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So in tonight's spirit of community and just in recognizing how collective City Bureau's work has been at every stage, we're so excited to invite 3 people we've worked with and learned from. So Jerome, Irene, and Nina, thank you and welcome. I'll be moderating tonight, mostly so Bettina and Daryl can also share their thoughts on these questions. I'm just thrilled that we get to have this conversation and honestly to be like a hype man for people whose work we love and respect so much. I'll give everyone a quick introduction. We have a couple of questions for each of you to kick things off. And then we'll be taking questions from anyone who's on this call. So as we go through the conversation, Anything you're curious about, any questions, this chat has been so live all night. So please drop all your questions here. We'll turn to those partway through the conversation. Cool. Irene, I'm going to start by introducing you. Irene Romulo is a journalist and abolitionist organizer. She was a City Bureau Fellow, and she's a co-founder of Cicero Independiente, a bilingual news organization in Cicero, a suburb just west of Chicago. Irene, I just want to say also, you've shown us a lot about what's possible about this work. Like a lot of the ideas we talk about in the fellowship, you and your team have really made that real through your work in Cicero, and that inspires us in this work every day. So thank you for being here. Jerome Vaughn is the news director at WDET, Detroit's NPR station. He's been working at the station to tell the stories of Metro Detroiters for the past 28 years, and he helped launch Documenters in Detroit in 2018. Along with being our partner on that project, Jerome has also been a big supporter of City Bureau. He's been a mentor to us. He's given us these pep talks that have really broadened how we think about City Bureau's impact. So Jerome, thank you for those pep talks, and thank you for being here tonight. Hey, Nina. Nina Weingro. Nina's the co-founder of Enois, a nonprofit that works to make journalism in Brazil more diverse, representative, and inclusive. Nina's a fellow with the International Consortium for Journalists and researches local journalism innovation. In 2019, Nina and her team launched the Sao Paulo Public Newsroom, or by its Portuguese name, Redação Aberta. Nina, I know I speak for all the City Bureau's founders in saying that when you reached out and we realized we had this sister organization in Brazil that was so deeply aligned, it just forever changed how we think about this work. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So we're starting with questions about what we've learned together. I'm starting with a question for each of you, and Irene, I want to pass it to you first. You were first an organizer and then a City Bureau Fellow, and then you went on to co-found Cicero Independiente in your hometown. What led you to create Cicero Independiente, and what lessons did you take from your time in the fellowship?
Thank you, and thanks for the introduction. I'm so happy to be here and to read the chat and try to, focus. But I think for me, part of the wanting to start a bilingual organization in Cicero was really informed by my organizing experiences and realizing that journalism can be a powerful tool in libertarian movements. Like it's so important to be able to have journalism that's in service of and by people of color. And really like 100 years from now, I want people to know that we existed and that we struggled and that we did work directly from our voices, from our perspectives. And that's like why I wanted to start Cicero Independiente. I saw a need, and really I wanted to also create journalism that didn't center our trauma, but that actually gave us tools and information that could be used to shape our current reality. And that's part of what I took away from the fellowship. I learned, I applied to the fellowship because I didn't know how to do journalism. But really when I was there, not only did I like pick up skills, but I learned that we have the power to create the things that we want to see and the kind of newsrooms that we want to run. And that really so much of journalism is also about organizing and having good relationships with people and listening and creating things that are actually moving us forward rather than perpetuating the same systems of oppression that we already see. And I thought it was so important how we like at City Bureau like centers the people that the stories are about, right? It's not just writing about like our pain or the things that we're going through, but really giving us the tools to like make sure that we're putting out there the kinds of narratives, stories, and tools that we want to see. Other stuff that I took away, and I brought my props, are my handy dandy City Bureau red notebooks that are full of like wisdom that I like look to all the time. Like here I have my notes from workshops that Jenny gave, that Bettina gave, notes and quotes from some of my other peers and guest speakers. And, whenever I have a question or just want to remember like something that like one of my other fellows said, I really like turn to these notebooks because they're like they have a lot of the skills that I use now. And they remind me that, yeah, like I have the power to do this, and like so do other people. And we have a right to information and a right to like create the things we want to see.
Yeah, well, thank you, Irene, so much. I want to tell you now, I'm going to ask you to find some wisdom from that notebook at the end and share it out if you can. Bettina, I want to ask you about this too, because I mentioned in the intro that Cicero Independiente has had a big impact on us too. So what has it meant for the fellowship to see Cicero Independiente grow?
Well, first of all, I want everyone to know that it's quite smoky in here, and that's why I'm crying. So if you see any tears, it's because of the air in here. But I don't know, Irene, it's so beautiful to hear you speak about that, and you know, everyone who's in here can tell why. It's so amazing to have her in the community. I think the really big thing I would say we take away from what we've seen Irene do in Cicero is that, you know, going back to what I said earlier, we were realizing that we're trying to build, or we were teaching fellows how to be ready for the future of journalism. And what Irene shows us is that they can build it themselves, right? That like we can be here, we can do everything we can here, but it's what people go on and do after City Bureau that really matters. So, you know, we built a new alumni network. We've been finding other ways to support folks. For instance, I know that Harry's had conversations about like fundraising and putting together operation side stuff for people on our network who are trying to start their own orgs. Or who have already done it. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, is that it's not, you know, just what's happening like in the City Bureau bubble, but like what happens beyond that matters more.
Cool, yeah. Jerome, I want to turn to you. WDET is an institution with a deep history in Detroit. It's also an NPR affiliate, which I feel like for a lot of people is like what they think of when they think of old school kind of traditional journalism. I want to ask you how Documenters fits into that. Because you managed to do so many innovative things, you know, at WDET. Do you remember when you first heard about Documenters and what you thought about it? And since then, what has it meant for you and your team's work?
Yeah, it was several years ago. Our general manager at the radio station at the time, Michelle Swerbinovich, brought Daryl in and introduced him to the folks in the newsroom. And we got a chance to talk with him as a group, but also individually. And I was really struck by our individual conversation about how important this idea of doing journalism differently, moving it forward, and getting it into the hands of everybody. It really struck me. You know, I'm old school, right? That's why I'm at an NPR station. But, you know, I'm also old school in having this love for the idea of democracy, of having the idea of people in Detroit participate in what's going on in their lives, in their government. And Daryl just brought this energy and enthusiasm about it. And so just right after that first meeting, I was all in. I was, you know, looking forward to the next time he was going to come. I went out there to Chicago to see how the project worked out in Chicago. And, you know, that's been it. And what it means, it's been a great way for a small newsroom, a small public radio newsroom to really be able to flex, have important partners in Detroit to tell the stories of Detroiters, because that's why we're all at WDET, is to tell those stories and to get the folks in Detroit to tell their own stories. So that's what it's meant on one level. On another level, it has been incredibly emotionally rewarding, and that sounds very stodgy, but to have met all of you and get a chance to work together with all of you, it's something that's been really very important to me. I consider all of you friends, and I look forward to seeing all of you. And so it's been really important on that level as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jerome. It's been so much fun. Daryl, I want to put that same question to you. Detroit was the first place that we partnered with an organization outside of Chicago. What did you learn in the process in working in Detroit, and how has that impacted the local work?
I mean, so much. So Detroit was the first program, like you said, for documentaries outside of the city. We spent nearly a year just talking to folks, whether it was people in government, whether it was journalists, people who are community organizers, before we got really to trainings. And that work of listening and being present and learning how to shape a program with local people in a local context, not just like a cookie cutter program where we come from Chicago, we drop it down. We've taken that experience, that model, and we've applied it elsewhere. We've done the same thing in Cleveland at this point. Whenever we take a documentary program, we're going to use that same kind of inspiration in that model. But really on a personal level, like spending time with folks like Jerome, like Courtney out at WT, out at Candace, Jerome's got 28 years of experience. I'm 34 years old. Like that is an invaluable transfer of wisdom and knowledge and just the time spent doing this work. So I highly value the time that we got spent together, and it's definitely influenced how we think of expansion beyond just Detroit.
Yeah, it's been huge. Nina, we love to tell people that there is a city bureau in Brazil. Like I love telling people that. We tell people that all the time. But it's actually more honest and accurate to say that there's an Anois in Chicago, because you were around first and you came to us first. So I just want to ask, like, what drew you to City Bureau's work in the first place, and how has it impacted your work since?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this party. I'm very honored to be here today, sharing a little bit about the work that we do here in São Paulo. So yes, I found out about City Bureau because it amazed me how much alike the organizations were. So we had the same training program for fellows. We did partnerships to publish news in newsrooms that weren't very diverse and didn't cover the city as we thought it should be covered. But then we had this challenge that the fellows kept coming to us with, that was, look, it's really nice that we can publish in all these newsrooms and media, but my neighbor, it's not getting the news that he or she needs. Our community is not engaged in those media outlets. So how are we able to do that, to distribute the information that these people need, where they need it? So I've learned about the Public Newsroom program, and I was very excited, and I got this fellowship, and I just wrote Daryl, I think I remember, listen, I got this fellowship. I just learned about you guys on the internet. Would you host me for a month? Like, can I learn everything that you're doing? And he just said, yeah, come on over. And it was it was a huge yes. And I was really happy because it was very generous of City Bureau to share not only the experiences, but, all the documents, like the Google Sheets, everything. And when I came back home, I'm just telling people, look, we have to do this. We have to do this Public Newsroom thing. And everyone came along, and we started in 2019 to do Public Newsroom workshops. And we've seen a huge impact so far. I mean, it's been a wild ride because we've been able to understand the communities that we want to talk to. We mapped those communities. Our fellows were able to rethink the way that they distribute information that they're making. And we've been able to create this space where these exchanges are done, and to really actually create a community that we weren't able to create before. So the pandemic hit, and we're still doing it. We are on the 19th edition. So we've been able to do like once a month, not so many as you guys, but working on it. And we've discovered a lot of things. Like we did workshops on FOIA for communities, how to, ask questions to your city council, or to cover better, violence in the suburbs and outskirt communities. Enormous types of themes that people are engaged to and want to talk about. So it's been amazing, really.
It's been amazing for us too. Bettina and Daryl, all of us have also had an opportunity to visit the work in Sao Paulo. What did both of you take away from that? Bettina, I'll pass it to you first. What do you remember from that we learned from Anois?
Yeah, I remember when, by the way, when Nina first came and we said, we were like, oh wow, it's so amazing that you get to do this program. You get to come hang out in Chicago with us for a month. And Nina, you said that a lot of newsrooms sometimes say no. And I just couldn't believe it, because I was like, why would you not want to have like an amazing person from a different country come visit you? Like the exchange that we had was so great. So I'm so glad that you did ask us. I would say one of the things that really stands out to me about visiting the Anois newsroom, besides the fact that y'all are in this amazing building that was really beautiful and full of light and plants and lovely things, you know, the amount of care that you put in for your fellows is just amazing to me. So Anois has a psychologist on staff who works to help make the curriculum more culturally competent, more you know, folks are, for instance, reporting on issues that are really close to them and maybe they've experienced themselves. It's very emotionally taxing. And the fact that y'all had invested in somebody to come in and work closely with fellows around mental wellness was just, you know, I feel like it's an amazing, you know, it shouldn't be an innovation, but you all really invested in it.
I'll plus one the first part of what Bettina said. Nina, when you were here, I was just like, oh, this is amazing. That's such a great time. And then being able to go to Brazil and see the same thing. I love that process like has led to just friendship with all three of you here on the screen right now, sharing all these things with you. If I could jump on kind of what we learned, the thing that stuck out to me most was just kind of the affirmation in seeing a model so similar to City Bureau in Sao Paulo, having developed completely independently. Like that affirmation, that's like, you know, we're a part of a movement, you know, it's like the ideas are in the zeitgeist, being able to see that we're thinking similar things from across the world and then be able to come together and learn from each other. That's amazing.
Yeah, I just want to plus one that also, like it sounds so wild to like have an exchange like that, to be talking across these programs in Chicago and Sao Paulo. But when we went, like so much was different, but it also so much felt so familiar. Like the problems that people were working on and the way that people were organizing themselves to work through those problems, it just felt like the same work. Yeah, I want to make sure we open it up a little bit. So anyone, Eden and Nina, Jerome, feel free to jump in on any of these questions. Eden, I'm going to ask you to respond first to this next one. So City Bureau really started because in our own work, the four of us, we were talking with people on the South and West sides, especially in Black and Latinx neighborhoods. And we heard over and over that they were sick of reductive, inaccurate narratives in the media. And we were too. So a question that should be obvious, but I think actually separates the work of these four organizations from a lot of journalism. Why is it important who gets to do journalism? Like what changes about the work when people who live in, grew up in, have deep relationships in a place are also the ones who are shaping and creating media around it? Irene, just for you, like what was media in Cicero like when you were growing up, and how are you doing it differently?
I think for me, I mean, before like we were around, there really was no like local bilingual news outlet that was like trying to bring more transparency and accountability to our local government, and actually like trying to break down the barriers that prevent people from being engaged like civically, like barriers that are put there by people, right? They don't just like happen out of nowhere. So that's another one of the reasons why we wanted to create Cicero Independiente, and realizing too that a lot of the media that I would see before, especially like media that covers like undocumented communities or like immigrant communities, or that's often about like communities of color but written by like white people, don't necessarily capture the nuance of our lives. Like they center, like I've said before, our trauma, or like paint pictures of like, for example, like in the Dreamer narrative, paint pictures of like just deserving immigrants or like deserving undocumented people, without actually talking about like the root causes of a lot of the things that we face. So that like is part of like why I think it's so important to have people from the community like who understand like what like we're going through, like do this reporting. And not to say that like we're going to be perfect all the time, or that like we're going to like automatically know everything, or like completely like change journalism, especially if we're like put in positions where we don't actually have power to do so in newsrooms. But it's just so important to like have us be around. And like I will forever hype the Tribe and like the coverage that they are doing now, even in like covering the protests that are happening, right? Like being able to center like Black joy in like everything that is happening, being able to like talk in a nuanced way about like the COVID West Side Party that they cover. If y'all don't know like the Tribe, you should definitely like follow them and look at like their work, because like that's some of like what we're striving to do at Cicero Independiente, like making sure that we are telling like good, accurate stories about our people in ways that are empowering, in ways that like offer us, like even talk about like some of the things that we may not want to talk about, like anti-Blackness that happens, or that actually give people like tools and informations that are useful for them to like change things around them. So like, and you can see that with the Southside Weekly too. Like I've been in like organizing spaces more recently, or in protests where like people have like shouted out these news outlets because they're actually covering things in accurate ways that don't censor those who already have like so much institutional power. So yeah, like that's why we need to be in these spaces. We need to have like the power to like change things and the resources to do so.
We're all six of us are nodding really heavy during that answer. And I see also all across the top, a lot of people are nodding really heavy. Nina, you were really nodding heavy. Can I ask you the same question? Like what's the problem as you see it in media in Brazil, and how is Inóis trying to do it differently?
I'm gonna try to answer, and someone sent another question in the chat. Maybe it will relate to my answer. So I'm just gonna tell a recent story about when the pandemic hit Brazil. I don't know how much of you guys know of our current political situation, that we are under a very worse than Trump kind of president here. He is dismantling all our political institutions. So it's a very difficult time for journalism and also, you know, everyone living here in Brazil. But when the pandemic hit, so the traditional media, the mainstream media, were talking about all these health instructions that people were supposed to have, you know, like social distancing, wearing a mask. When you are inside your home, you have to wash your hands like every time. If you know you live with other people, when you work outside, you have to try to make social distancing inside your house. And we kept, you know, hearing those things, and you know, with our communities and the communities that we cover, and it just didn't make any sense to them because. I mean, most of outskirt communities, underserved communities, favelas here in Brazil, you have 7 to 8 people living in, you know, a 1-bedroom house, for example. Most of the favelas, you have problem with water system, so you don't get any water. Like, so how can you wash your hands? You know, how can you make social distancing? How can you stay at home? You can't stay at home. You know, people need to work. They need to, you know, pay their bills. So we started to talk with a lot of these local newsrooms that we partner with, and they started to come up with solutions to inform those communities in order to understand, you know, the context that they were living in and what kind of solutions that we could have in that context. So if you don't have water at home, how can you share water with your community? Or how can you try to have solutions inside your house to not, if someone is infected, that you are not getting COVID? And the ways that people were trying to inform the communities were not the traditional ways. So people started to make posters and started to, you know, glue posters all over the favelas to inform these communities with something that the traditional media wasn't informing. And one of the other things that I saw happening also was that we're very huge fans of WhatsApp here. And our internet access is very limited, especially in underserved communities and in favelas. But WhatsApp is not. WhatsApp is free because Facebook wants everyone to, you know, exchange their information in WhatsApp. So this is how people get informed and also uninformed, because a lot of fake news goes around in WhatsApp. But since COVID, these local organizations, news organizations, started to come up with solutions to inform people through WhatsApp. So instead of, you know, creating your podcast and putting it online or, you know, iTunes, they just created, you know, small podcasts to send through WhatsApp messages, because a lot of people don't know how to write or read, but they still needed information, you know. So we've seen, you know, during the pandemic, a lot of solutions coming up in order to attend information needs of these communities that were not being seen or heard in national television, you know, in traditional media. So that was, you know, very, very important to these local organizations to understand, but also to make it make the national media aware that they're not meeting, you know, information needs of the majority of the population.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I'll say when we were visiting, we saw so many examples of people who were like self-organizing to meet basic needs, like everywhere. People do that everywhere, right? But they really do it in Brazil. Like I'm talking like water supplies and electrical grids. And I think that really, we came back with a lot of that, like people building it themselves. Daryl, you wrote an essay a few weeks ago that I think really touches on this, about like what journalism can learn from mutual aid. Could you just speak to that for a minute? Like what have you learned this past year from the way that people have been organizing to meet their own needs during the pandemic?
Yeah, sure. Similar point. A lot of the points from that piece have been kind of running through my mind a lot lately, but the one that sticks out most is a quote from this group in Seattle, this mutual aid group called Big Door Brigade. And they say mutual aid is solidarity, not charity. So when we talk about equipping our communities, it's not like us bestowing knowledge and power on those who don't know any better or have any better. It's mutual. Like the change that we make changes us. You know, because this work, this community, this event, like the people in this room, this is about solidarity right here. So I think that's one of the reasons why journalism can learn so much from mutual aid principles. I think those are some connections between kind of what Nina was talking about, what Renee was just talking about, what Jerome is talking about, like this conversation. Yeah.
Jerome, I want to pass it back to you. We got a question in the chat, which is actually almost the same question as one that we had for you. Detroit has gotten a lot of national attention this past month because of the presidential election results. Can you just like cut through all that noise for us? Like take us to Detroit. What are you hearing from listeners about what Detroiters themselves need from local news and civic institutions?
I'll give you the short answer. I think they need to get the information, much like what Nina was saying, much like what Irene was saying. They need the information to get through their daily lives that will make it easier. I was so not surprised, but you know, as I was listening to Nina, we've got the same issues with water here, right? That the area utility shuts off water if people haven't paid their bills for so long. And so that's a story that, you know, we've been following for a long while. This idea is water something you just pay for, or is it a right? And that's become even more important during coronavirus. So we're trying to you know, talk to Detroiters and hear from them what they want to know. And I think that's a lot of what is missing in journalism. Daryl was, touching on it. So often it is, there's a news organization that comes from on high and says, you shall know this and just this. And it's useless to the people who are listening or reading or watching it, because the journalists haven't asked, what's missing, what do you need to know, what's going to help you. And so that's something that we've really infused in what's going on. Also here in Detroit, I think there's a group of collaborators that have worked with us in recent years that really have, gotten great at that. Folks like Outlier Media, Chalkbeat, Detour Detroit. There are these organizations that have taken that approach of actually talking to the people where they live, getting to know them, asking them questions before coming up with a single story idea. And that's something that's been very important in changing how what we produce is and how it affects Detroiters. Outlier, I'll just talk about just for a minute, a partner of ours. They've got a text system that they use to collect information and disseminate information, because again, high-speed internet is something that a lot of Detroiters don't have, but just about everybody's got a phone. So again, looking for new ways to get that information out. And I think more importantly, to listen first. We don't decide what we're going to do. We listen to what Detroiters are saying and then respond. Yeah,
we see the same thing. We're almost out of time. I have just one more quick question. There's been a lot of questions in the chat that are really kind of the same question. Daryl, I'm gonna pass this one to you. Local news outlets are disappearing, and a lot of public accountability along with it. I feel like I'm just putting this on a tee, man. Do you see the City Bureau or Documenters model working in other places and in smaller towns?
Yeah, I was just over here like typing away to answer this exact same question. I mean, like emphatic yes, huge yes. I mean, some days I really do believe that documenters, public newsroom, these models could be even more impactful in smaller towns, rural areas, because of the lack of existing media infrastructure. A people-powered, collective, crowdsourced, community-driven news outlet. That's the future to me. So that's what we're looking at. How do we do it? We're in Cleveland, we're in Detroit. We're looking at what it means to shape this other places. So if anyone has thoughts, let me know, because this is the next iteration for documenters, is how do we serve even more people and bring in partners to really own this model.
Yeah. This conversation went so fast. We're at time now, so I want to ask everybody just to do a quick outro. Just how can people stay in touch with your work if they want to follow it? And also, Eden, I want to ask if you would just drop some wisdom from your notebook. So we'll have you go last. Jerome, can we start with you, and then Nina, and then Irene?
Our work is at wdet.org. And you can always find me on Twitter at JVDET. I just can't say how much I love these folks at City Bureau. They are the best, and I've learned a lot from them, and I will continue learning a lot from them.
I just put my handle here at the chat. And I just want to say thank you again. Hope all of you can come to Brazil anytime soon as possible. And I'm so happy to be here and share, whatever experiences that we have been doing here, and also learn from you guys. And I miss all of you. Wanted to be in person, but feel free to reach me out on my my contacts here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nina. All right, Danny.
Yeah, so you can just follow us on social media, Cicero Independiente. I'll put it on the chat box for people. And also I want to say how like badass it is to have like Nina here, like coming from a whole other like country. Like internationalist organizing is gonna like liberate us, and it's so great to see like internationalist like journalism as well. From my notebook, I'm bringing up a little picture that I drew that like just reminds us that journalism is a process. It's not about the product. And somebody in one of the trainings said this, but stories don't fix problems. If they did, problems would be fixed already. Like it's about the relationships and what you do like before you actually put something out there. So that's some of the wisdom from my handy dandy red notebook.
Wow, that is like the perfect way to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Ida. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Jerome. I wish we could talk all night, but we'll keep talking for the next 5 years. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Andrew here to move us on to the next phase.
Wow, that was really, really amazing. And I'm almost at a loss for words, right? There was so much that just happened in the past 30 minutes, and it really did fly by. I do have one concrete thing to say, which is that we have 16 new recurring monthly donors, which is just really a powerful expression of community and how much people, really are invested in this work. And a bunch of other one-time contributions beside that. And a quick disclaimer that I can't see existing donors who are updating their contributions. So if any of you have done that also, thank you so much. And it all means the world to us. I'd say I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did, but judging from the chat, I think it's safe to say that it's a safe assumption to make. And before I ask again for anyone else who's out there to join us as monthly donors, and before we break for the next section, which is a really exciting continuation of really this conversation in a small group setting, where we're going to break out into small groups and continue the conversation, so we can actually get to see some people that maybe we don't know, and maybe see some people that we haven't seen for a long time. And before I do that, I wanted to share my personal reason for being a recurring donor to City Bureau. And the place I should start is saying that I actually came to this work through community organizing, through political organizing, which I've been doing on the Lower West Side of Chicago for the past 6 years. And I think kind of echoing a lot of what we were hearing in the conversation there is that one of the things that I learned is that community is really an action word, right? Without this idea of if you're not constantly rebuilding and reinventing and reinforcing community, before you know it, it's gone. And fundamentally, community is about being able to come together to address common issues. And so key to this, fundamental to all of this, and this was covered beautifully by so many people in the conversation just now and in the chat, is that the base level is that everyone has to have access to quality information, and information that they can trust to help them identify their community and ways that they can participate in it. And for me, my introduction to City Bureau was the Living with Lead story back in 2016. And at the time I was serving as a community representative on the local school council of Pilsen Academy. And when the story came out, I remember that CPS bent over backward to assure us that there was no need to worry about lead in the water of the elementary school. And at the same time, living in Pilsen, we would get letters from the mayor's office assuring us that there was no need to test our water at home, since there was no risk of lead contamination. And I promise that all of the mentions of water safety were not coordinated. This is just coming up, and this is truly a global issue. But again, you're told, particularly here, that it's a miracle of modern society. You don't have to worry about the potable water in your house. But because of City Bureau's reporting, we did test our water and we did find lead in it. And shortly thereafter, because of City Bureau's reporting, the school was also forced to test the water in all of its water fountains and throughout the school, and they also found lead in the water fountains in an elementary school. So if you know anything about lead poisoning, that it's a very scary thing, that the only reason we knew about it was because of City Bureau's reporting. And so, if you don't have access to the relevant information, you don't know to care. You don't know to prioritize an issue. And if you don't know to prioritize an issue, you can't educate your network, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and tell people that, hey, this is something that we should be paying attention to. And if you can't do that, then you can't organize your community to join a town hall or a protest or do anything like that. Another great example of this recently is the home lending story with WBEZ that Bettina mentioned earlier. And the protest it sparked that drew the commitment of record investments from Chase Bank, some of the communities we serve, and have really caused good trouble, as they say. And so if you don't do that, you can't pressure leaders to make policy concessions or replace them if they refuse. And just as important, and I think something that a lot of the speakers talked about just now, is that without access to quality information about what's happening around you, you also can't connect with your neighbors to celebrate the joyful moments that make community so precious. And so right at that moment, I knew I was grateful that City Bureau existed. But the moment I knew I had to become part of this work was when I read City Bureau's core values, that we don't believe in heroes. We want to build this movement together. We value and respect the process as much as the product, like Irene just so beautifully said. And we believe in place. And that's the most real I've ever seen an organization get about the ingredients of community building. I was and am still inspired by this desire to approach challenges collectively with the humility to admit that we don't have the answers and the audacity to believe that together we can make something better that strengthens the communities here in Chicago and around the world. And so, that was my aha moment where I felt like I needed to do something to get involved in this more deeply. And I'm very grateful to be here. And for anybody here who's new to the space and new to the work, I feel really good about asking you all to join me as a sustaining donor, because I'm absolutely confident that this is work that you will always feel good about being a part of. It's generative, it's exciting, it's new, and it's an expression of community solidarity that's really, really beautiful. And so with that, I'm passing it off to Ellie, who's going to tee up this event that I teased just a second ago. And I hope you all enjoy it like we think you will.
Thank you, Andrew. It's always really interesting to hear what brings people to our work. And now we are actually going to be shifting and spending some time talking about what excites all of us about what City Bureau is doing, what Enois is doing, what WDT and Cicera Independiente are doing. So really quickly, hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ellie. I'm City Bureau's community resource organizer. And I'm here to provide some instructions for the next portion of our evening, which if you are a Public Newsroom regular, you are probably pretty used to. So we'll take the next 20 minutes or so to talk in smaller groups about why you decided to be here today, what you've observed about the way information travels in your community, and what you wish more people knew about your neighborhood. So in a moment, Zoom will prompt you to join a breakout group. Please let us know now if you require closed captions so we can place you in the right group. Once you accept this prompt from Zoom, you'll be placed into a small group with one facilitator and a couple other attendees. Your facilitator will ask your group to discuss 3 questions. While you talk, that facilitator will also take some notes, which we will be keeping anonymous. By the way, your breakout groups will also not be recorded. And after about 20 minutes, we'll come back together as one big group and ask a few facilitators to share some highlights. And after tonight, we'll take a closer look at these notes to help inform City Bureau's work in 2021. So I just want to reiterate that these contributions tonight are important and they are helping us guide decisions that we make next year. And while we're all still here, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of the facilitators that attended a training and lent your time and energy towards this effort. These are all folks who have done work for City Bureau in the past and are parts of our network in different ways, so you'll be in good hands. Great, so if anyone has any questions before we go ahead and drop them into the chat while India gets us sorted into our right breakout groups. And you can also ask your facilitator once you're in the room. That's it, have fun, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all for participating in that breakout group. As we sort of trickle back into the main room, we are going to take a look at some of the things that you all said in your small groups. while we are all here, let's just take a moment to see, the notes that are available to us now. The screenshot, for those of you who aren't in the know, the screenshot that you're seeing now is Mural, which is an app that we asked our facilitators to take notes on. It does take some adjusting too. They were very gracious about that. So each of these smaller boxes that you're seeing here with names are the different breakout groups that you all were in. And each different Post-it note represents a different thought that maybe you or someone in your group contributed. So when we zoom out, however, we see that all of these smaller boxes make up this big busy whole. And so, the reason we wanted to use this app is that it's like a nice way of illustrating how after just 20 minutes of talking with one another, we have all of these insights that, like I mentioned earlier, the City Bureau team will dig into and process after this event. But while we are all here together, we did want to highlight some of our facilitators. And so I just want to ask each facilitator to just share their name with us and how they are part of the City Bureau network, and then to just talk a little bit about some of the stuff that came up in your group. So why don't we start with Ade, who is to my right on my Zoom. Ade, if you want to introduce yourself and just tell us how you are part of the City Bureau network.
Yeah, so I'm Ade Emmanuel. I'm editor-in-chief at Injustice Watch, and let me see, where does it start, Well, it kind of starts with, I've known Daryl for a little while, or knew of Daryl for a while, I think there was like a Sun Times internship I kept trying to get, and I didn't get it till like later. But when I was like a sophomore or something, Daryl, I was like, who the hell is Daryl Holiday? So, young journalist being, I looked the guy up. I was like, oh, he's pretty cool. I ended up working with him at DNA Info. Bettina worked there as well. And, they sort of, I think, I met, Harry and Andrea through them and was very much indoctrinated, I think, and a believer in the message and the vision of doing things differently. And, I said this in the breakout, but, for and not just, about people, and I think it's something that I was in my own awakening of figuring out a different way than what I learned in J school, So it's, I feel like they're still growing. We're all still growing. And it's been great to have an institution like this, to help folks make that pivot. So that's like my connection.
Thank you.
And I was supposed to talk about what happened, like what I heard in my group.
Yeah, just anything that resonated with you or struck you about what folks were saying in your chat.
Yeah, I was with Morgan and we were doubled up, which is okay. I don't mind sharing, spotlight. But let me see. I mean, I feel like there's lots of, there's the cults of City Bureau. A lot of people love this place, and a lot of folks have been able to, like I said, watch it grow. And I think it's, I think about as a manager how I grade interaction. A lot of it is like, do people feel good when they walk away from me in some way, even if it's not a great thing? And I think City Bureau is one of those places where, I think a lot of folks feel good about it. And I think it represents a new idea and all the hopes that people put in a new idea. And I think that's something that I think I picked up from a lot of us who are sort of doing that first question. I think a big picture thing, when we're talking about the news this year and how information is shared, it's hard to know what's what. This has been a very dizzying year. And I think that from our local environment, to, the barbershop and the neighbors, or just like, my mom was always telling me, oh yeah, my neighbor was saying something. I'm like, oh no, you should just listen to the CDC. People are really in need of reliable information, and it's literally a matter of life and death. And it's I think that's like been a big thing, and more placelessness, people being at home, thinking more about actually, And you're also thinking about their immediate environment, but then thinking about other places like, oh, what are Black people doing over there? Or, even I feel like not just Black people, certainly, but I think that we're sort of in this place of thinking about our surroundings and out there and trying to make some sense of it, and information being shared in a way that is not necessarily always supportive to, I guess, the truth. There's lots of misinformation, and again, it's about life or death. And I think that's something that really shone through from what people were talking about, just that it's not just, a hoax that could give someone misinformation that leads them to endanger other people's lives. So the stakes, high stakes. Yeah, I think that's kind of I'm gonna leave it at that.
Thank you for sharing. That reminds me so much of Nina's comment earlier about, people needing to find creative ways of sharing actually usable information in their communities. We'll pass it on to Alma now. Alma, can you tell us how you're part of the City Bureau network and share something that struck you from your breakout group?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alma. So I work as a freelance journalist here in Chicago. I actually started out my journalism career with City Bureau. I've been writing in other capacities before, but I really, launched into this really full throttle about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it was through a public newsroom. It was on doing FOIA requests. And that's how I met people and got connected to the fellowship and so many other things. So yeah, that was about 2 years ago. So let's see some highlights. Let me look at Mural. So one of the things on question number one, answering the question of what people feel they need. Well, here, let me see. In thinking about what's happened in 2020, what have you learned? So some of the responses were, I think that were struck me was that, it goes back to an earlier conversation that we had today about really looking at what communities need and not the people in power dictating how information should be disseminated, but really asking and figuring out how people can access information and how to do that. So just thinking differently about ways to disseminate information, and just the fact that local news should look at spreading that in different ways, as opposed to the, traditional news story, right? We talked about that a lot earlier. So that came up a lot, and also about relationship building and just the importance of building relationships and not just writing stories or, speaking to sources, on one occasion and never, talking to them again. What example came up that I felt would really show this was the way that, for example, CPS has been disseminating information to parents and, to communities about reopening or about just COVID and precautions and things like that, and how essential information like that is coming from the top, right, from power, and how it's really just it has been really complex and difficult to digest, because it's coming from the top rather than from the bottom, and really asking what ways could be just easier for people for parents, for communities to have access to this super essential, important information right now. Yeah, that's something else that came up was, I think Bradley shared, he lives in Lincoln Park, and he just feels it'd be cool if he, if people in that area, right, with, he mentioned the privilege, could know more about other neighborhoods, surrounding neighborhoods or other neighborhoods in Chicago, and how knowing more about what's happening in other areas as opposed to just your neighborhood, could affect change.
Yeah, totally. I love hearing all of the connections to our conversation earlier on. Thank you, Alma. We are running low on time, so for the remaining facilitators, I'll just ask you all to try and condense all of the insightful comments from your breakout group into one sentence. So Corley, I'm wondering if you could just share how you sort of got involved with City Bureau's work and just a top line, something that struck you from your breakout group.
Sure. I got involved with City Bureau, I believe it was 2015 when I was in Free Spirit Media as an intern with Real Shy Youth. And I was a mentee with Sarah, and I met Andrea. And I've been connected with you guys ever since. So since it's been born. And I actually was a fellow this fall, and I am a documenter as well. One of the things that struck me throughout this conversation was how important everybody thought that community building is when it comes to journalism. And it's really important how local journalism builds community, because a lot of the times, a lot of these national outlets, they just look for the hook. And a lot of participants said that, and that's totally important, because they just try to catch you and try to get you in with a headline without doing like the actual real on the ground reporting that local news does.
Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be a huge theme for tonight. Thank you, Corley. Manny, can you tell us how you got involved with City Bureau and what your group discussed?
Yeah, so I'm a reporter with the Chicago Sun-Times. I got involved with City Bureau. So I was an intern at the Chicago Reader, and City Bureau had just launched, and the editor there at the time thought it would be a good idea to put me in connection with Daryl and try to get me into City Bureau's fellowship program. And I think it was like the second or third fellowship ring that they had. But I've been following City Bureau since it's launched. Always loved the work, and honestly, really changed the trajectory of my career. The folks, Daryl, Andrea, Bettina, Harry, all sort of like fostered this I guess like, watchful eye over my career personally and my development. And I think, like Ade mentioned about being indoctrinated into like the City Bureau model is something that I still carry with me all the time. So yeah, I mean, in terms of sort of our breakout groups, one of the interesting things that we were discussing was that as a reporter, we love doing long form writing. We love doing these big projects, but that may not always sort of be what's desired for the public, especially if we're talking about working class folks who just don't have the time to sit there and read all day, or are too exhausted to read or even listen to something for too long, and providing sort of bite-sized materials for easy digestible content, I think is really important. I think Nina mentioned that as well earlier today. Another thing was, putting positive spins on grim stories. So like, we all know about the long waits at food pantries and how difficult it is for folks right now, trying to get food for the first time because they're unemployed or whatever, but really trying to highlight what folks in the community are doing to solve that problem without little government support. So, highlighting, people who run pantries and showcasing how they're stepping up, while also, using that as sort of like a tool to navigate through that tough story to tell. And also, I think there's a way to sort of, we in the media ourselves had to find a way to sort of break that national TV news trends that a lot of people are in right now, really showcasing the fact that local media is super important and are much, it's more beneficial for a person's, content viewing instead of just looking at the prism of just red and blue. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The need for more coverage of resourcefulness and hopefulness and joy definitely came up in our group as well. Thank you. And last but not least, Joe, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about what your group discussed.
Sure, that's a perfect setup for me. But first, my name is Joe. I'm the director of Night Lab at Medill, which is a media technology and design studio. Before that, I was a newsroom developer at the Chicago Tribune. And so I first got involved with City Bureau before the first events when Daryl and Andrea asked me if I'd serve as a technology advisor. And I even did some workshops with fellows about using data and media, digital media for storytelling. And then when City Bureau Incorporated is a nonprofit, I was asked to be on the board, which I've enthusiastically joined and have been involved ever since in that regard as a director. And it's really valuable to me personally to be plugged into City Bureau. I come from these obviously sort of bigger media institutions, and I see a lot of the problems. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be connected to this community and this organization to be a channel for a different way of thinking about it back to these places. And so in our group, we spent a lot of time introducing each other and loving on City Bureau like everyone else. So we didn't really spend as long on the questions as we could have, but everyone sort of acknowledged the value of this community and talked about how there is sort of this problem for media enthusiasts, both working people and just sort of nerds, to not sort of recognize how to cross the gap to regular folks. And so there was sort of recognition that we need to do that, but also some honest hope that while news organizations now maybe sort of put stuff out there, but don't really think about how it gets to their audiences, that that we can be more mindful of that. And there's a specific shout out to Nina and Inouye in Brazil about how they do that. And that could be, that's coming, which is good. And we did sort of lean into that optimism. There's sort of recognition of the problems of parachute journalism. The coverage of the House Party came up, but that Tribe sort of took that and put a positive spin on that. And also there's a shout out to Vashawn Jordan, who did a photo book called The Joyful Revolution, also sort of documenting this other way of looking at what's going on in communities. And so I think that I think everybody sort of feels that that opportunity to tell different stories is already showing promise and only can only get better in the next year. So I think that's about it.
I feel like that's the perfect note to end on. Thank you guys all so much, both for just being really great journalists in your own right, and also wanting to stick around and hang out with us tonight and take notes and talk to folks. I will hand it back to Andrew now to close this out for the evening.
So it looks like we have, sorry, just pulling it up here. We had about, it's coming up. All right. Thanks so much, Allie, and everybody, moderators, facilitators, everybody who participated in every way. I did want to share one last update on our fundraising totals, which is actually extremely exciting. We had 24 people donate, and we actually raised annualized, so all the recurring donations over the course of the year, plus the individual donations, $4,334 additional. So snaps to everybody who dug deep and really kind of showed their support for this work. And that puts us over all time now $50,000 that's going to go directly to the people doing the work, that are documenters, fellows, and public newsroom hosts in 2021. So you can expect to see some really great things from us next year. And we've got some big plans already. And thank you again also for everyone who participated in those breakout groups. We hope you had fun, and really it's super important for us to be able to hear from you and see what's important to you to hear from in the community. And we definitely will be working to incorporate that into our plans for 2020 and into what we're doing next year and beyond. So thanks for that. And a special thank you to our board and our partners and folks who have really come out, including Akila Lee, Michelle Morris, Joe Gramusco, who you just heard from, Tiana Epps Johnson, Sheila Solomon, Jamie Calvin, and Flowers for Dreams, who helped co-sponsor this event. And also to Gene Reineke and Hawthorne Strategy, who came through with a $100 a month donation, which is something that's really, really special and means a lot. But thank you, everyone, for everything that you've done to put this together. And we wanted to end tonight with our favorite City Bureau tradition, which is the aptly named Big Clap. And so the way this works, if for the uninitiated, is on the count of 4. So 1, 2, 3, silent 4 count.
Unmute.
No, thank you. And I'm going to invite chaos, importantly, inviting the chaos by asking you all to unmute at the same time so we can hear your wonderful clap. And so on the kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that, practice run. All right, I'm at kind of an angled ceiling here. I'm going to kind of pivot. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, the beautiful sound of 73 semi-simultaneous claps. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a blast. We're gonna have some music playing again, and feel free to hang out. We're gonna be here for a little bit. Drop some stuff in the chat, ask some questions out loud if you'd like. And thanks again for making this happen.